I watched my house burn with him inside. And for the first time in years, I did not feel fear. I felt only the scorching heat on my face and a strange, terrifying sense of peace. The flames danced against the night sky, painting the darkness with vibrant shades of orange and red. The sirens were wailing in the distance, getting louder with every second, but to me, they sounded like a fading echo. I stood there, shivering in the cold night air, wrapping my thin cardigan tighter around my body. My neighbors were gathering on the street, their faces pale with shock, whispering and pointing at the inferno that used to be my home. But they didn't know. They didn't know about the locked door. They didn't know about the bruises that were currently hidden beneath my sleeves. And they certainly didn't know that just 10 minutes ago, I had made a choice that would define the rest of my life. To understand why I stood there, watching the destruction of everything I owned without shedding a single tear. You have to understand who I was before. You have to understand who Mark was. My name is Rebecca. If you had met me 5 years ago, you would have said I was the luckiest woman in the world. I was 24 years old, ambitious, and full of life. I had just finished my degree in graphic design and was ready to take on the world. That was when I met him. Mark. He was charming. That is the first thing everyone said about him. He had a smile that could light up a room and eyes that seemed to look right into your soul. We met at a gallery opening in the city. I was standing in front of a painting, trying to understand the artist's intention, when a deep, smooth voice spoke from behind me. It looks like chaos, doesn't it? But if you look closely, there is a pattern, he said. I turned around and saw him. He was tall, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, holding 2 glasses of champagne. He offered one to me. That was how it started. It was like a whirlwind romance from a movie. He was older than me, established in his career as an architect, and he seemed to know exactly what he wanted. He wanted me. For the first 6 months, life was a dream. He showered me with gifts, surprised me with weekend trips to the coast, and listened to me as if my words were the most important things on earth. I felt seen. I felt adored. He told me that he had been waiting his whole life for someone like me. He said I was special, that I was fragile, and needed to be protected. At the time, I thought it was romantic. I didn't realize that protecting me was just the first step in controlling me. The changes were subtle at first. They were so small that I made excuses for them. It started with my clothes. We were getting ready for a dinner party with his colleagues. I had put on a red dress that I loved. It made me feel confident. Mark walked into the bedroom, buttoning his shirt. He stopped and looked at me. His expression wasn't one of admiration. It was critical. "Is that what you are wearing, Rebecca?" he asked, his voice calm but cold. "Yes," I said, smiling uncertainly. "Do you like it?" He sighed, walking over to me and placing his hands on my shoulders. "It's a beautiful dress, darling. But it's a bit attention-seeking, isn't it? I don't want people to get the wrong idea about you. I want them to respect you as my wife." I felt a sudden flush of embarrassment. I thought I looked nice, but if Mark thought it was inappropriate, maybe I was wrong. He had better taste than I did. He knew his colleagues better than I did. So, I took off the red dress and put on a modest black one instead. When I came out, he kissed my forehead. "Much better," he whispered. "You look elegant now, classy." I took that as a compliment. I didn't realize that he was slowly stripping away my identity, layer by layer. Then it was my friends. I had a best friend named Sarah. We had known each other since childhood. We used to talk on the phone every day. But Mark didn't like Sarah. He never said it directly. Instead, he would make little comments. "She's a bit loud, isn't she?" Or, "She doesn't seem very supportive of our relationship. I think she's jealous of what we have." One evening, I was on the phone with Sarah, laughing about something silly that had happened at work. Mark was sitting on the sofa, reading a book. I saw him tense up. He closed the book loudly and placed it on the table. "Rebecca," he said, his voice sharp, "I have had a long day. I need some peace and quiet. Can you please take that somewhere else?" I quickly said goodbye to Sarah and hung up. "I'm sorry," I told him. He looked at me with disappointment. "You know, you spend hours talking to her, but you barely ask me how my day was. It feels like you prioritize her over our marriage." I felt terrible. I promised to do better. Slowly, the phone calls to Sarah became less frequent. Then they stopped altogether. I isolated myself without even realizing it. I thought I was just being a good wife. I thought I was making sacrifices for love. We moved into the house on the hill a year after we got married. It was a beautiful, old Victorian house. It had high ceilings, a large garden, and a heavy oak front door. Mark had designed the renovations himself. It was his masterpiece. To everyone else, it looked like a palace. To me, it eventually became a prison. The first time he hit me, it was a Tuesday. It was raining. I remember the weather because the sound of the rain against the windows was the only sound in the house after it happened. I had come home late from work. There had been a delay with the trains. My phone had died, so I couldn't call him. When I walked through the door, wet and tired, I expected him to be worried. Instead, he was sitting at the dining table, staring at a cold plate of dinner. "Where have you been?" he asked. The air in the room felt heavy. "The trains were delayed, Mark. My phone died." "I'm so sorry," I explained, taking off my wet coat. He stood up and walked toward me. "Do you think I'm stupid, Rebecca? You were with someone, weren't you?" "What? No, I was at work." I argued, shocked by the accusation. "Don't lie to me," he shouted. The sudden volume of his voice made me flinch. "I called your office. They said you left at 5. It is now 7. Where were you for 2 hours?" "I told you the trains." Before I could finish the sentence, his hand lashed out. The slap was hard and fast. It caught me on the cheek, and the force of it knocked me backward. I stumbled and fell against the wall. I didn't feel the pain immediately. I felt shock. Pure, absolute shock. I sat on the floor, holding my cheek, staring up at him with wide eyes. My brain couldn't process what had just happened. Mark, the man who brought me flowers, the man who held my hand during movies, had just hit me. His face changed instantly. The rage vanished, replaced by a look of horror. He dropped to his knees and tried to touch me, but I flinched away. "Oh my God, Rebecca," he stammered. I didn't mean to. I don't know what happened. I was so worried about you. I thought something had happened to you, and when you walked in." He started crying. He buried his face in his hands. "I'm a monster. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. It will never happen again. I swear." I looked at him, weeping on the floor, and my heart broke. Not for myself, but for him. I thought he was in pain. I thought he had just lost control because he loved me too much. "It's okay," I whispered, though my cheek was throbbing. "I know you didn't mean it." That was the first lie I told myself. And it was the beginning of the cycle. The next day, the house was filled with flowers. Roses, lilies, tulips, every surface was covered in bouquets. He bought me a diamond necklace. He cooked dinner. He was the perfect husband again. He was sweeter and more attentive than he had ever been. This phase is what psychologists call the honeymoon phase of abuse. It is the hook that keeps you there. You think, this is the real him. The angry man was just an anomaly. But the angry man was not an anomaly. He was always there, waiting beneath the surface. Over the next 2 years, the incidents became more frequent. It wasn't always physical. Sometimes it was psychological torment. He would hide my keys and blame me for losing them. He would tell me that I was useless, that no one else would ever love me, that I was lucky he put up with me. "You're pathetic, Rebecca," he would say when I cried. "Look at you. You can't even handle a simple conversation without falling apart." I started to believe him. My confidence eroded like a cliff face in a storm. I quit my job because he said it was causing too much stress and making me moody. I became a housewife, tending to the big house, cooking meals that had to be perfect, and walking on eggshells every single day. I learned to read his moods by the sound of his footsteps in the hallway. Heavy steps meant he was angry. Quick steps meant he was anxious. I molded myself into whatever he needed me to be just to avoid an explosion. But the explosions happened anyway. The turning point, the moment, the seed of rebellion was planted in my mind, happened 3 months before the fire. I had found an old phone in a drawer. I charged it up and turned it on, just out of curiosity. It had messages from Sarah from 2 years ago. "Becky, are you okay? I'm worried about you. Please call me." I sat on the bathroom floor, reading these messages, tears streaming down my face. I realized how alone I was, I realized that if I died in this house, no one would know the truth. Mark would tell everyone it was an accident, or that I was sick. He would play the grieving widower, and everyone would believe him. That thought terrified me more than the violence. The thought of being erased. I decided I had to leave. But you cannot just walk away from a man like Mark. He had cameras at the front gate. He checked the mileage on my car. He monitored my bank account. If I was going to leave, I needed a plan. I started stashing cash. When I went grocery shopping, I would get $20 cash back and hide it in a hollowed-out book in the library. It wasn't much, but it gave me a tiny sense of control. However, Mark sensed that I was pulling away. Abusers have a sixth sense for when their victims are becoming independent. He became more aggressive. The rules became stricter. I wasn't allowed to leave the house without his permission. Then came the night of the fire. It was late October. The wind was howling outside, stripping the last of the leaves from the trees. The atmosphere in the house was electric with tension. Mark had come home from work early, and he had been drinking. I could smell the whiskey on his breath from across the room. I was in the kitchen, preparing a stew. I was chopping vegetables, trying to keep my hands steady. Mark was leaning against the doorframe, watching me. "You're quiet tonight," he observed. "I'm just concentrating on dinner," I said softly, not looking up. He walked over and picked up a piece of carrot I had just chopped. He examined it. "These pieces are uneven. You know I hate it when the vegetables cook unevenly." "I'll fix it," I said quickly, reaching for the knife. He grabbed my wrist. His grip was like iron. "Stop." I froze. I looked up into his eyes. They were glazed and dark. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he hissed. My heart began to race. "I don't know what you mean, Mark." "I found the money, Rebecca," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. My blood ran cold. The money in the book. He had found it. "I was looking for a book to read," he continued, smiling a cruel smile. And imagine my surprise when I found $300 hidden inside. Great Expectations. "What were you planning to do?" "Run away." He squeezed my wrist harder. I winced. I was saving it for your birthday," I lied. It was a weak lie, and he knew it. "Liar," he screamed, and he threw me backward. I crashed into the counter, knocking over a bottle of cooking oil. It shattered, spreading a slick, golden pool across the floor. Mark laughed. "Look at you, a clumsy, lying mess." He advanced on me. I scrambled back, slipping on the oil. I grabbed a heavy wooden cutting board, holding it up like a shield. "Stay back," I warned him. My voice was shaking, but for the first time, there was real anger behind it. "Or what?" he taunted. "What are you going to do?" He lunged at me. I swung the cutting board blindly. It connected with his shoulder, staggering him. He roared in anger and grabbed me by the hair. He dragged me into the living room. "You need to be taught a lesson," he growled. "A real lesson this time." He threw me onto the rug near the fireplace. A fire was crackling in the hearth, keeping the room warm. He stood over me, unbuckling his belt. "Please, Mark, stop," I begged, crawling backward. "It's too late for that," he said. He raised the belt. I curled into a ball, waiting for the blow. But as he swung, he stumbled. He was drunker than I realized. His foot caught on the edge of the rug. He pitched forward, crashing into the heavy side table where a large oil lamp stood. The lamp smashed onto the floor. The oil splashed everywhere onto the rug, onto the curtains, and onto Mark's clothes. The flame from the fireplace licked out, hungry for fuel. Whoosh! In an instant, the rug was ablaze. The fire caught the spilled lamp oil and raced up the curtains. Mark scrambled up, but he had hit his head on the table when he fell. He was disoriented. He looked at the fire, then at me. "Put it out," he screamed. "Do something, you useless woman." The fire was spreading fast. The old wood of the house was dry. Smoke began to fill the room, thick and black. My instinct was to run to the kitchen and get water. I stood up, coughing. But then I looked at him. He was trying to stomp out the fire, but it was growing too fast. He looked at me with pure hatred. "Help me," he yelled. "Don't just stand there." And then he said the words that sealed his fate. "Wait until I put this out," he snarled. "I am going to kill you, Rebecca. I swear to God, tonight is the last night you breathe." Time seemed to stop. The roar of the fire faded into the background. All I could hear was his voice. "I am going to kill you." I knew he meant it. If the fire was put out, if we survived this night, he would end me. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, I would be another statistic. Another woman murdered by her husband in her own home. I looked at the door leading to the hallway, the only exit from the living room besides the patio doors, which were locked and barred from the outside. Another, one of his security measures. "Rebecca," he shouted, coughing as the smoke thickened. I didn't grab a bucket of water. I didn't call 911. I turned and ran. I ran into the hallway. I could hear him stumbling after me. "Come back here," he screamed. I grabbed the heavy oak door of the living room. It was a solid, thick door, designed to keep drafts out. I slammed it shut. There was a key in the lock. Mark always kept the keys in the doors. He liked to be able to lock rooms if he wanted to punish me. My hand found the cold brass key. I heard his body slam against the other side of the door. The handle turned violently. "Rebecca, open this door." I looked at the key. My hand trembled. If I turned it, I became something else. I became a killer. No, a survivor. I turned the key. Click. The sound was small, but it felt like a gunshot. "Rebecca," he pounded on the door. "Open it, the fire. It's getting big. Open the door." I backed away. Smoke was already seeping underneath the doorframe. I could hear the crackle of the flames growing louder. like a beast devouring a meal. "I can't," I whispered. "I can't let you out." "I'm sorry," he screamed, his voice filled with panic now. "I'm sorry, baby. I love you. I won't hurt you. Please." "You said that before," I said, my voice gaining strength. "You always say that." "It burns, Rebecca. It's hot. Open the door." I turned away. Tears were streaming down my face, but they weren't for him. They were for the girl I used to be. The girl who believed in fairy tales. That girl was dying in that room with him. I grabbed my coat from the rack in the hallway. I grabbed my purse, which had my ID and the car keys. I walked to the front door. The house was filling with smoke now. The fire alarm finally started blaring, a piercing shriek that hurt my ears. I opened the front door and stepped out into the cold, windy night. The fresh air hit my lungs like a shock. I gasped, coughing out the smoke. I walked down the path, through the metal gate, and across the street. I turned around. The living room window exploded. Glass shattered outward, and a tongue of fire shot out into the night. The curtains were incinerated. I could see the silhouette of the room inside, engulfed in orange chaos. I didn't see him. I stood there and watched. The fire spread to the second floor. The roof began to smoke. Neighbors started coming out of their houses. "Oh my God, is anyone inside?" Mrs. Gable from next door ran up to me. She put a blanket around my shoulders. "Rebecca, are you okay? Is Mark in there?" I looked at her. Her face was full of concern. I paused. I had to be careful. I was in the kitchen. The oil lamp, it fell. It happened so fast. "Is Mark inside?" she asked again, shaking me gently. I looked back at the house. The roof was now aflame. It was a beacon in the night. "He was trying to put it out," I said, my voice flat. "He told me to run. He said he would follow me." "Oh, dear God," Mrs. Gable whispered. "Someone call the fire department." "They're coming," someone else shouted. I stood there, watching the destruction. I thought about the locked door. I wondered if the fire would melt the lock. I wondered if the firemen would find the key turned. But in a fire this size, inside an old wooden house, the evidence would be ash. The door frame would burn away. The floor would collapse. He was gone. The fire trucks arrived, their lights flashing. Men in heavy gear ran towards the house with hoses. They shouted orders. They sprayed water on the flames, but it was too late. The house was a skeleton of fire. A paramedic checked me over. "You have some smoke inhalation, ma'am, and a bruise on your cheek." I touched my face. "I fell," I said automatically, "when I was running out." "We need to take you to the hospital," he said. "No," I said firmly. "I want to stay. I need to see." I watched until the roof collapsed. A shower of sparks flew up into the sky, like fireworks. It was beautiful in a horrific way. As the structure crumbled, I felt a weight lift off my chest. The cage was destroyed. The monster was gone. It has been 6 months since that night. The investigation ruled it an accidental fire. They said the cause was likely an overturned oil lamp, just as I had said. They found Mark's remains in the living room. They assumed he had been overcome by smoke before he could escape. The door was destroyed. There was no way to prove it had been locked. I inherited the insurance money. I didn't want it. It felt like blood money. But Sarah, who I finally called the next day, told me to take it. "You earned it," she said grimly. "Consider it payment for the years he stole from you." I sold the land where the house stood. I couldn't bear to look at the blackened scar on the hill. I moved to a small apartment in a different city. It's not fancy. It has creaky floorboards and a view of a brick wall. But it's mine. I have a lock on the door, and I am the only one who has the key. I am seeing a therapist. I talk about the guilt, because I do feel guilt. I am a human being, and I let another human being die. I hear his screams in my nightmares. I see the fire when I close my eyes. You did what you had to do to survive, my therapist tells me. It was self-defense. I know she is right. If I had opened that door, I would be the one in the ground, and he would be free. He would have charmed the police. He would have cried at my funeral. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder about the nature of justice. I didn't trust the law to protect me. The law requires proof, and abusers are experts at hiding proof. My bruises would heal. His threats were just words. So I created my own justice. I am not the same Rebecca who loved red dresses and painted with watercolors. I am harder now. I am more cautious. When I meet men, I watch their hands. I listen to the tone of their voice. I trust no one easily. But yesterday, I bought a red dress. I stood in the fitting room of the store and looked at myself in the mirror. I saw the scar on my arm from the fire, a small burn I got as I ran out. I saw the faint lines of worry on my forehead. But I also saw a woman who was standing tall. I bought the dress. I wore it out to dinner with Sarah. We laughed. We drank wine. For the first time in years, I didn't check my phone. I didn't worry about being home by a certain time. I walked home in the cool evening air. I looked up at the moon. I am scarred. I am a widow. I am a survivor. And as I unlocked the door to my apartment, I whispered into the silence, I am free. The key turned with a solid click. I stepped inside, locked the door behind me, and finally I slept. That is my story. It is a heavy story to tell, and I know it is not a fairy tale, but life is complicated. Sometimes the villains don't wear masks, and the heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes the hero is just a woman who decides that she wants to live. If you are listening to this, and you feel like you are in a cage, please know that you are not alone. There are people who want to help you. You don't have to wait for a fire. You don't have to wait until it's life or death. Reach out. Call an old friend. Speak to a professional. Because your life belongs to you. Not to your partner, not to your parents, and not to your past. It belongs to you, and you are worth saving. Thank you for listening.